Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for our MP webinar covering HR and AI, Harnessing the Power of AI. I'm Katie Carter, Marketing Manager here at MP. For those of you joining us on a webinar for the first time, MP is a full-service human capital management company. We offer a complete suite of products and services to support organizations through the entire employee lifecycle, including recruiting, HR, payroll, benefits administration, time and attendance, and compliance assistance. We support our clients with cutting-edge technical solutions, as well as a proactive, reliable service and a deep HR and payroll expertise. At MP, we are wired for HR and help our clients succeed by aligning their people strategy with their business goals. I'm excited to introduce your presenter for today's program, Paul Carelis. Paul has over a decade of experience in the HR consulting space, working with businesses of all sizes and industries. Paul leads a team of SHRM certified HR professionals at MP. Together, they assist clients with compliance, training, and HR guidance and support for the full employee lifecycle. Paul also spearheads MP's employee retention tax credit services, and this initiative has helped clients claim over $100 million in refundable advanceable tax credit. Just a few housekeeping issues before we get started today. If you would like to submit a question during the program, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. We will be sending out the recording of the webinar later today, along with the slides. And so with all of that, I'm going to hand the mic off to Paul.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. Welcome everybody to today's presentation. Really looking forward to it. This is a extremely hot topic. And to be honest, there isn't a lot out there right now in terms of the HR specific applications and concerns when it comes to artificial intelligence. So really looking forward to talking about this today. Grateful to be able to present on it. I was able to learn quite a bit in doing my research and hope I can share a lot of that new information that I learned with you all as well. Just one note for those of you who have attended some of our webinars in the past, with this one, we are going to be sending out a few poll questions. So you'll see those pop up in the Zoom. We'd love your response, really to get a baseline for your experience or lack thereof when it comes to AI, your impressions of artificial intelligence currently, and how you envision utilizing it. So you will see some poll questions pop up. So again, we appreciate in advance your participation in responding to those so that we can get a better understanding for the audience specifically on this topic and help shape our future content that we're going to be releasing throughout 2024 and make sure it's custom tailored to the audience and what they're looking for and what appeals to them when it comes to AI specifically. So what we will be covering this afternoon, we'll go over a history of AI, especially as it relates to the business world and how it started and work through the last several decades to where it is today. We'll talk about how to harness the power of AI within your HR function and within your general business function as well. As you've probably heard as reading some of the headlines, there are some scary things that can go on and be detrimental to a business as well. So just kind of some cautionary tales when it comes to AI. We'll also talk about current governmental regulations in this space, as well as some upcoming stuff. We'll go over it in quite a bit of detail, but the White House did release an executive order a couple of months ago that is very wide-reaching and very comprehensive when it comes to kind of catching up with the technology in terms of AI. And then we'll also go over tips, tricks, and considerations as you either perfect and hone your AI function within your business, or if you're just getting started, some initial considerations. So yeah, and when we talk about AI today, we'll largely be talking about Chat GPT and things like that, where that's by and far the most common use in the business world right now of AI. And future content will go into some more specific focus areas. But again, hope you enjoy the presentation today. Right. So first, let's take a kind of quick look at the history of AI, and really the philosophy of AI goes back into ancient times and the desire for automation and simplifying tasks that can be repeatable. So by no means did AI as a notion start in the 1950s? But that's when the phrase was first coined in terms of artificial intelligence. So there was a conference at Dartmouth University where some of the professors and researchers there coined the phrase and kind of declared it as kind of the future of technology and of business. Um, Things kind of quickly got up to speed. The first that we saw of um, artificial intelligence being used in the manufacturing world by the first industrial robot was an assembly line robot utilized by General Motors in 1961. Believe it or not, way back in 1966, we saw the first chatbot or chatterbot as it was known then. So some researchers developed a technology that could come up with mimicked responses to human questions. So that was the first instance of a chatbot. And we all know, those have come a long way since. 1965 saw the first kind of expert system. So something that really took human thought and logic into account and developed a more wide-ranging system aside from just a chatbot and a response tool, but something that was a lot much more developed. And then in 1979, they formed the Advancement of Artificial Intelligence Association, and that still is around today and meeting regularly and kind of leading the advancement initiatives when it comes to AI. In the 80s is when we really started to see governments make some sizable investments in AI technology. So in 1981, Japan invested $850 million, and that's several billion dollars in today's money, in advancing AI computer systems, and those were very, very successful, and influenced some of the artificial intelligence that we see today. 1985, Aaron was created, so that's actually a automated drawing robot. So that was a cool invention within the arts world when it comes to AI. 1986 saw the first driverless car, technology that, as we've seen, is still being perfected to this day. 1997 was the first voice recognition software. So Microsoft released that in 1997. And in 2000, as we approached the 21st century, that's when we first got a robot that had human-like facial expressions. Then into more modern times, 2003 was a real significant advancement within AI technology. So those Mars rovers landed in 2003, and those were directed without and navigated without human involvement. So that was pretty groundbreaking for something that far away and that important to be able to navigate itself without human interaction. 2006 saw the advent, we really saw things pick up as the internet became more popular and more common. Online companies began using artificial intelligence to customize advertising, marketing, content to online users. 2011 was IBM supercomputer Watson competing on Jeopardy and beating a couple of grand champions. 2011 also saw Siri being launched by Apple. And then finally in 2017, Facebook got two separate chatbots to interact, negotiate, and eventually, as the negotiations progressed, they ended up abandoning English and invented their own language to communicate with one another. So just a small snippet of how far our AI has come over the last 60 to 70 years. So as I said, I wanted to take some time to cover ChatGPT. So believe it or not, even though it's become such a big part of our vernacular, it's really only just over a year old in terms of public beta testing usage. So it was launched on November 30th, 2022. The current free version has over 175 billion parameters and bits of information that it utilizes when coming up with its responses to questions and queries. Currently has 180 million active users, and on a weekly basis, 100 million users using it at least weekly. So huge numbers there, and we'll talk about how quickly it got up to those numbers too, which is just astonishing. ChatGPT also has an API that several businesses use to build their own functionalities and features for their own businesses. A recent report said that 92 from ChatGPT said that 2% of Fortune 500 companies are incorporating ChatGPT's API in some fashion of their business. Americans are the largest percentage of users of ChatGPT currently. They make up 14.82% of the user base. India is behind them in second. A company called Nada.ai recently did a survey of businesses who utilize ChatGPT, and 25% of those businesses say that through the use of ChatGPT and AI functionalities that they've saved between $50,000 and $75,000 since its inception, which is a staggering number. There were also companies that said they have saved well into the six figures. So that was a really interesting survey. For those of you who have seen or maybe be utilizing the ChatGPT's premium service, I believe it's $20 a month. That actually runs on a completely different program and engine than ChatGPT. So the free version runs on ChatGPT 3 or 3.5. GPT-4 is a whole nother animal. So where, as you can see above, the free version has 175 billion parameters. GPT-4 has 1 trillion parameters. They claim that it's 40% more accurate in terms of research and data and answering questions. And the example that they cite for being more accurate is that they gave both versions the universal bar exam, and GPT-3 failed the bar exam and failed it quite miserably, whereas GPT-4 scored in the 90th percentile on the bar exam. So much more advanced in terms of its information and data points and ability to reason and come up with more correct conclusions to queries. Looks like I think we do have the polls working. Okay, I know we were having some technical difficulties with the polls, but looks like they are now working. Great. So as I said, I just want to take a moment to talk about just how meteoric the rise of ChatGPT was in terms of users. So a contact measure is how fast an app or a platform take to get to 100 million users. So LinkedIn took nearly 8 years to reach, YouTube years to get to 100 million. Spotify took almost 5 years. TikTok was very quick, and they at their time broke the record for the race to 100 million users. So they got to 100 million users in 9 months. ChatGPT got to 100 million users in 2 months. So they broke the record for the fastest platform or app to reach 100 million users. I believe they reached 1 million in either 2 days or 5 days, which was also record setting. I will note that this record was recently broken by Threads, the Meta's alternative to Twitter. They reached 100 million users, I believe, in 5 days. But ChatGPT sustained kind of their user count, whereas Threads has seen theirs drop off. So as with any technology platform, there are pros, cons, and unknowns when it comes to utilizing ChatGPT, especially in the business world. So it's great for writing prompts, templates, communications, and we'll go over a lot of the various applications for artificial intelligence in the workplace soon. Most users report that it's very user-friendly. It can be modified for responses. You can ask it for more clarity, more detail. You can kind of augment the the response that it gives you and ask it to go back and change something or do it in a different way or a different method. And it's also very capable of digesting large data sets, documents, being able to summarize those things, extract what you need to, and really save quite a bit of time. Some cons or potential cons. So up until recently, the current version's information database was only updated until I believe it was March of 2021. So if you're asking it for current information, current regulations, thinking it through or looking at it through an HR lens, labor laws and things like that, a lot of the information was very outdated. They have modified it to be internet enabled now. So there is some modern aspects to it, but um, just like the dangers you get, and we always advise against practicing HR through Google, the results may not be any more reliable than when the information was outdated, even if it's current. If it's not accurate, then that was a pretty big risk when it the HR world and compliance. Also, it does not automatically provide citations. So one of the tips and tricks we'll go over is definitely if you're doing sort of research or using it to do research, you ask it to provide citations. I do also recommend once it does, double check those because through some of these they found that citation sometimes they're dead links. So you do want to get it to provide citations and you'll check those citations as well, just for your own reliability purposes. Case studies, surveys, court cases, unfortunately, which we'll get into in a little bit, have proven that sometimes the information can be incorrect. If you go to OpenAI, who's the company that runs ChatGPT, and go to their website, they'll be the first to admit that it's a technology in progress. And even with the much more accurate and reliable GPT-4 premium engine, they admit that there are limitations and problems and inaccuracies there. They do not claim to be 100% accurate. And for those of you who have spent some time and done some research, you will also see that there can be some issues with accuracy with the data results as well. And as we said before, whenever we're relying or opening up the information database to online resources, just like any of us, the information provided by ChatGPT can be susceptible to misleading or incorrect or fraudulent information online. There are also quite a few unknowns when it comes to ChatGPT. So first, how is sensitive data incorporated into the learning model? So we'll talk about this a little bit in some data leaks that have occurred, as well as just kind of some survey data in terms of people entering in confidential or sensitive data into ChatGPT or similar interfaces. And really it's not yet known how the system is handling that, digesting it, and potentially sharing it with others. So, if if I talk about my company and some financial results, if someone else is searching for financial results and that's public knowledge, you got to share that information as well. Sounds like we're having some audio issues. I apologize for that. If the recording does, we will be providing a recording to everybody. If that doesn't come out well, we'll certainly re-record it. Let me just quickly reset my audio and hopefully that will solve the problem. So I'm just going to pause for a second here. All right. And then finally, another unknown is, how detectable is the use of AI? So when AI creates something, whether it be writing an article, creating a paper for a student, writing a communication, how reliable are kind of those detection softwares that are out there? There was actually a recent controversy where a professor kind of failed his entire class because he used a AI detection software that claimed that all the students' work was AI generated, and that actually turned out to not be the case. So there is some unknown there in terms of the reliability of detectable software when it comes to AI. All right, so one question that's come in before we chat, how common are these issues with other generative AI chatbots? Definitely anything that's based off of GPT 4.0 is going to be more reliable, have better responses, be more recently updated in terms of its knowledge base. That being said, it's still far from 100% accurate. As we saw with Google's platform when they first launched it, that one is completely connected to the internet, but there were accuracy issues with that, and there continue to be some accuracy issues with that. So again, a great tool, definitely not foolproof, definitely still requiring some human oversight for accuracy and security purposes. So some ways that artificial intelligence has been able to be capitalized on by HR professionals, and there are several ways. Definitely screening candidates. There are several platforms or AI options within applicant tracking and recruiting software platforms that help screen candidates. That does not go without concern. We'll go over that when we talk about our HR horror stories. But it is a way, if you can get it to, especially rely on required qualifications for a job and screen out folks who don't meet those, or other requirements, that can be a huge time-saving tool. Can also be used for scheduling interviews within the recruiting function as well, utilizing calendars and things of that sort. Great for creating subsets interview questions for different positions, especially if a hiring manager might not be too familiar with a position or a field or area of expertise. That can be a great starting point for developing some interview questions. Also great for creating things like offer letters. AI can also make a much more smooth and interactive onboarding process for new hires, walk them through the paperwork that they need to fill out, get them set up on the systems, kind of provide a chat bot to walk them through user interfaces if they're new to your company's software and the software tools that you use. Also great for monitoring employee engagement. How often are they interacting with one another? How often are they using your different systems? It can also be used to come up with questions and roll out employee engagement surveys, as well as analyzing the results and make recommendations for how you may want to proceed based on the results of your survey. As we said before, it can definitely create memos, company communications. Again, some precautions there that we'll talk about shortly. It can be used to organize data sets, you know, taking some spreadsheets, inventory lists. You can ask it questions. You can ask, to sort things in a certain way. I know here at MP, we recently did a big outing and had a scavenger hunt. And so the person in charge of that gave ChatGPT the list of employees, I think by number and what department they work in, and asked them to create scavenger hunt teams that created a blend of the different departments and some other variables. And it took care of that in a minute. It's also great. You can provide links and documents within certain AI platforms and have them either summarize articles, come up with some conclusions, extract certain points or factual matters from articles or big reports. Can use it to do market data research for your organization, research competitors, research pricing info, whatever it might be able to get its hands on. Again, definitely double check the relevancy in terms of the dates and time frame that it's able to pull from. And you can also use it for externally facing communications as well, press releases, PR statements, client communications, things like that. Other aspects of business and ways that you can harness AI there. Brainstorming. So, if you're having writer's block or having trouble coming up with some ideas for whatever it might be, a project or a meeting topic or whatever, you can definitely ask it to brainstorm some ideas around something, and it'll give you usually some pretty healthy responses. You can also have it rewrite, whether it's something that was already created from AI or created by a human. You can supply it with that and ask it to rewrite it. You can also be specific and ask it to rewrite it in a certain way, as a white paper or as a more professional sounding document or as a letter. You can ask it to be more empathetic. Whatever you want it to do, it'll at least take a stab at it. It can also find patterns within data sets and numbers and figures. If you're looking to come to some conclusions regarding your leading indicators or lagging indicators, it can definitely help you find patterns there. A lot of companies use it to help write code for different systems and computer programs. Again, you need to be careful in terms of confidential information with that and proprietary information when it comes to code. It can help with scheduling, time and task management, booking meetings, finding common times that everyone is available to meet based on their calendars. It can be used for editing documents, papers, and the like. A lot of businesses are using it for credit and fraud risk assessment, being able to look at all the different variables and come up with a score for how likely or how good someone's credit is and how much risk there is involved in extending credit to an individual or a business. Facial recognition software has been one of the big advancements of AI within the last 10 or so years, used by government agencies, airports, all kinds of places as a safety measure. Again, not without some perils there, and we can talk about that as well. AI has also successfully been used to do gap analysis for companies, so kind of seeing based on what they've been able to produce or what they have set up or what their cybersecurity policies are, where there may be holes or may be concerns. On the flip side, some people worry that this information in the wrong hands can help teach hackers and cyber criminals how to infiltrate certain businesses. So, word of caution with that. And then it can also, many businesses use it for their marketing content. Another question that came in regarding surveys: will it crunch the data and, more importantly, provide improvement suggestions for managers? So yeah, so much of this, it depends on the prompting and the way that you phrase your requests and the data that you provide it. There are actual positions you'll see posted out there on job sites looking for AI prompt professionals, so people who are well versed and well trained in how to get the most out of these AI platforms and how to phrase questions and queries so that you get really meaningful responses. But yeah, definitely, you can send it survey data and it will help draw conclusions if you phrase your questions the right way. Yeah, so it can be really valuable in that sense. All right, so just a few recent AI horror stories, and not to get too negative, but just some cautionary tales here. So there was a story just very recently where a Chevrolet dealership was utilizing a chatbot as part of its sales function, and a X or Twitter programmer kind of figured out the pattern and how the chat box was operating. So got it to basically say yes to anything that the customer was asking, and also follow up each statement with, this is a legally binding statement, no takesies backsies. And so, long story short, the developer eventually got around to asking about a Chevy Tahoe and requested to have that car sold to him for $1. And the way that he had kind of manipulated the chatbot, it agreed to it and said that this is a legally binding statement, no takesies backsies, and thus kind of became famous for negotiating a $1 brand new Chevy Tahoe. So do be mindful if you do use chatbots, especially for your customer service experience, that they can be susceptible, and you want to be careful in terms of what level of authorization they may have on your behalf as an organization. You also want to be very careful with sensitive data. So there was a pretty significant data leak with Samsung And it was found that some employees had entered company confidential information and some sensitive data into ChatGPT. There was recently a study by an organization that polled workers at companies who use AI, and 15% of respondents said that they do enter sensitive data into GPT. So some caution there, and we'll talk about some strategies to hopefully help mitigate that in a moment. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission did just recently last year settle their first AI-related lawsuit. It was against a tutoring company. So the tutoring company was utilizing a recruiting and a candidate screening software. And that software was automatically rejecting any female candidate who was over the age of 55 and any male candidate who was over the age of 60. And that tutoring company did end up settling with the EEOC, and had to pay $365 to settle that case. Also, federal court in New York did just fine 2 lawyers and their firm $5,000 each. They were involved in a lawsuit against a company, and their written arguments were created using ChatGPT. Unfortunately, the arguments that were created through the AI platform contained some cases, some false opinions, had some incorrect or non-existent citations in the work. The judge felt that they were acting in bad faith by using ChatGPT to create this legal document and legal argument. So they were all fined as a result. All right, so let's talk a little bit about government regulation. It wouldn't be an HR webinar without talking about compliance. So when it comes to the government, oftentimes they do lag behind in catching up regulations and law with technology, and this case is no different. So what this law does is it states that New York City employers, again, whether you're in New York City or you have employees in New York City or you interview candidates located in New York City, you're not allowed to use these automated employment decision tools. So these are platforms that will screen candidates and make decisions and come to conclusions based on application data. So in order for a business to be allowed to use these types of software in New York City, they need to make sure that that software has an independent bias audit performed. It must be performed annually, and the results of it must be published either online or in some sort of published documentation. Interestingly, it didn't say that they haven't come to any conclusions in terms of if that data shows troubling signs, that doesn't necessarily mean that the business can't use it. They just need to show that they have performed the independent bias audit. So I guess the argument to that is that it's then published. So if it's found that the software that you're using for candidates is determined to be biased in some way and you continue to use it, then you would be liable in that sense. Also, any candidate who is located in New York City must be given notification about the usage of an automated employment decision tool if you do utilize that. Question here, the AEDT rule is only if you're actually declining candidates automatically, right? My interpretation of the regulation is if you're using it at all in New York City, then it should be disclosed. But we can get some clarification on that and respond. So that's the biggest player in terms of outside of federal agencies and what's in place now. Certainly, ChatGPT leading the way, but as one of the other attendees suggested, Microsoft has one, Google has one. There are countless other AI platforms and tools out there. So it really caught the government by storm a little bit and off guard. So they are quickly scrambling to come up with rules and regulations. As I said, the White House released an executive order on October 30th of last year. It was really sweeping, had a ton of detail to it. But these are some of the highlights. First, they said that the largest AI companies need to do safety testing and share those results with the federal government. The NIST needs to create some universal AI safety standards to protect Americans and other individuals from cybersecurity, their personal information, anything else that could be harmful as a result of AI. Similarly, Homeland Security also has been charged through this executive order with developing guidelines for how to prevent AI from becoming a national security risk or leaving us prone to cyber attacks. Coming soon, if you're not seeing it already, federal agencies are going to soon be required to utilize watermarking on any government communications that they publish, just to show that they are authentic and not AI generated. They've also tasked the Department of Justice and Civil Rights to examine and enforce any civil rights concerns when it comes to utilization of AI, especially within law enforcement and employment. The Department of Labor over the next year is going to be performing a study on the potential impact to the labor market, as well as coming up with a plan to support factions of the workforce in certain industries that may be more negatively impacted by the advancement of AI. So different roles that can be potentially eliminated or automated through artificial intelligence. The federal government wants the Department of Labor to come up with a plan to mitigate that. They're also looking to modernize visa criteria, so be able to take advantage of non-US citizens who may have some real AI expertise and have trouble through the current visa process to be able to get employment visas to come work here and contribute to our AI infrastructure here in the United States. They are, speaking of, looking for government agencies to rapidly hire AI professionals. And finally, they have required every federal agency and bureau to have a chief AI officer in charge of the AI protocols for that respective department within the government. So a lot more to come on this. You'll almost certainly see changes if you are currently using AI to different aspects of it as these government regulations start to take hold and take effect. So definitely keep your eyes peeled on that. As I said, state governments are also very keen on this and starting to formulate some things within current legislative sessions. So stay tuned to us. We'll be keeping our client base informed of any regulatory changes when it comes to AI and how it may affect employers and employment law. So in terms of tips, tricks, and considerations when it comes to utilizing AI within your HR function and within your business as a whole, first thing, definitely you want to create, implement, and communicate an AI policy across your company. So some things you want to cover in that policy. What is the allowable usage? Do you allow employees to utilize ChatGPT or Bard or any of those generative AI models? Do you ban it? Do you allow it? Do you allow it for internal use but not external? Do you allow it for things like customer or client communications? You want to be pretty clear on that and enforce it. Do employees need to disclose when they've utilized artificial intelligence in their research or in a communication or in a document that they've created? You want to set clear boundaries and expectations when it comes to usage of sensitive information or confidential information, and how that's being entered, if at all, into AI platforms. And then application, what are you allowing employees to use AI on, and what are you forbidding them to use AI on if you are letting them to use it for some things? If you're new to AI, you definitely want to test pilot it internally before you send anything out. Really, just keep in mind that anything that you're utilizing AI for and then publishing or putting out there, whether it be internally or externally, you're responsible for and you're liable for. So certainly when you see these news stories, they'll throw the AI platform under the bus for making the mistake. But when you see these litigations and fines and large settlements and public relations nightmares and disasters, it's the company that utilized the AI and not the AI company that's facing the brunt of that. So just understand the responsibility and the liability there. Definitely utilize proofreaders. I've dabbled with some AI and tested it out in certain ways, and I can say I've never felt that it didn't need some level of editing. So do make sure you're not just having it spit something out and assuming that it's good to go and sending it out somewhere. Also, I think AI is an exciting thing. The first few times you use it, your mind is kind of blown for what it comes up with, and it just seems so human and seems so empathetic and seems so real. But the more that you use it, and I don't know if everyone's experience is the same as mine and the folks I talk to, you start to see it become repetitive. It starts to use the same phrasing and framework. So the first couple of times you use it, it can definitely sound like it's coming from you. But the more that you use it and potentially overuse it, people might catch on that things are being generated by AI and not actually coming from you or potentially coming from the heart. So when we talk about employee morale, um, client satisfaction, things like that, if people are onto you that you're using AI to come up with all these heartfelt messages and things that are supposed to be genuine and part of your culture, that can be a negative effect on morale if they know it's actually a robot or a computer writing those sentiments. Given the current up in the airness, I'd say, of government regulation on this topic, I recommend limiting your spending and implementation or dependency on new systems until these laws are sorted out. I just hate to see a business make a huge investment in an AI technology only to see the government crack down on it and be working with a vendor or a system that isn't willing to do the spend to get it into compliance with whatever those regulations may be. So just be cautious with that. And if you are using it for an opinion or a ruling, we tend not to recommend it for employee relations issues and things like that. Just it doesn't know the history of the company, what precedent you set by how you handled different HR matters in the past. It doesn't necessarily know your company's culture or history of decision making or tendencies with decision making. So just be really cautious there. Also, we've talked about it before, but the data can be outdated at best, incorrect at worst. So when you're using it for compliance to see what the laws are or what the regulations are or how a law is interpreted, just be careful there. It's always best to speak with an HR professional or legal counsel for anything really important compliance-wise. And as I said before, always be wearing, well, that's a typo there, but be wearing your PR hat. So just understand, what you're putting out there is representative of your company, whether that's internal or external communications. So be mindful with that. And then finally, have fun with it. Again, there are tons of free options out there. And as long as you're not sharing anything sensitive, medical data and client data, things like that, credit card information, financials, there are tons of options out there. And there are many, many ways that you can utilize that. And we'll be sharing more examples of that over the course of this year. But um, there are probably platforms you're using now for CRM or HCM and whatnot that have implemented something. Again, over 90% of Fortune 500 companies are utilizing the API from ChatGPT or one of the other AI platforms. So explore it, dip your toe in it, try it out. Don't be afraid of it. Kind of see what works for you and what doesn't. Just be mindful of those privacy concerns. All right. Yes, you stole my joke from me. So yeah, I can proudly say that artificial intelligence was not utilized in the making of this presentation as evidenced by my typo there. All right, one more question. Looks like we have a minute and feel free to submit any other questions you might have. It seems like because this is so new and the level of monitoring necessary, it may not be cost effective for small companies to invest in this currently. Would you agree? So I'd say yes and no. Definitely, I think it isn't wise for small companies to invest financially um, in AI to a great extent right now. Certainly, talk out there with your colleagues and other like businesses if they found something that's working really well for them, or you have some trusted testimonials, then it's good. Again, I wouldn't completely steer clear of AI because of all the regulatory information up in the air. Again, you can only comply with what's out there and what's on the books right now. So we are in the wild, wild west a little bit. But again, there are so many free options that, next time you're thinking about writing an email or, um, you know, trying to brainstorming, as I said before, or just suffering from incredible writer's block, sign up for a free ChatGPT account or a free Google Bard account and put an inquiry in there and see what it spits out. You're not bound to use it or utilize it necessarily. Again, definitely if you're doing anything that requires any bit of research, do make sure you tell it to give you the citations and cite the sources. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a great time to try it out, find what you like, what you don't like. Definitely stay in tuned. Follow our blogs, follow our upcoming webinars on this topic. There's a lot more. I mean, again, just think about what this webinar would have looked like a year ago when ChatGPT was 2 months old versus what it looks like now. I mean, it's a whole new world. So I can only imagine that by the end of 2024, yes, there'll be regulations in place, and yes, there'll be some rules and some boundaries, I'm sure, and some things we need to be very cautious about. But I think the capabilities will also be huge this time at the end of this year. So it's an exciting time. It is a time to be mindful. I tend to be more conservative with these things, but as long as you have a group of trusted compliance and HR professionals on your side that can help advise and proofread and make recommendations for you, then have a little bit of fun with it. So that brings us to the end of the presentation today. Thank you so much for your participation. Again, my apologies for the audio issues. We'll look into that, and if we need to re-record, we certainly will. But otherwise, I'll hand things back over to my colleague, Katie.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul, and thank you all for hanging on with us, and we appreciate it. To learn more about NP's full service HR solutions for 2024 and more, please head to our website at np-hr.com. And if you want to check out and talk to Paul and his team, please go to the HR under resources, and then you can book a meeting with them. So be sure to join us next week at the same day or next month to join our webinar, New Age of Accommodation Requests, HR Evolution. Visit our website to register and to see the full calendar of upcoming events and available resources. We will be sending out a recording of today's webinar with the presentation slides this afternoon. Thanks for joining us and have a terrific day.